Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Sitting across from me today, David Roys, who this man himself has a lot of history to talk about, as he does about his father, Henry Roys. These two gentlemen have probably seen more musical history being made, at least from the electronic standpoint, the record business standpoint, or maybe I should say the record standpoint. He's in the studio with us today. David, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
Glad to have you here. So your dad, first of all, let's start with him, Henry Roys. He didn't invent radio, but he came pretty darn close to it, didn't he?
Yeah. In 1926, when he got out of college, the first thing they sent him to the top of Mount Washington, New Hampshire, one of the coldest, most inhospitable places on earth. And their job was to establish a radio contact, a radio link between the United States and Europe. And one cold day in February 1926, they did it.
Wow.
And after that, well, they first went to Schenectady, New York, and they started a team of engineers. He wasn't the leader, but they built the first 50,000-watt AM transmitter, and they had to do it from the ground up. The big output tubes, RF output tubes, they had to build those from the ground up, which means they even started with the glass envelopes. Corning Glass Works in nearby Corning, New York was there, and they helped them out. So they had to build everything from the components, everything.
Back in those days, you were building almost everything from scratch because you didn't have the mass manufacturing that you do now.
And they had to develop materials that were good insulators under a lot of heat. And a Bakelite came out, and of course glass was good. So they had to have wire and heavy-duty vacuum tubes that take a lot of power.
And then your dad advanced into the record manufacturing business.
Yeah.
Now, reading the notes that you sent me, I didn't realize this initially, that there were different formats being developed when it came to the phonograph and the phonograph record.
Yeah. There was one that Emile Berliner developed with a disc and a lateral. The needle moved laterally. Thomas Edison moved vertically, and he had a cylinder. So they both developed theirs about the same time. It was more practical to make it a disc, and so the lateral movement was chosen. And the 78s came out, and they lasted for years.
Yeah.
In fact, they used to, when they put a lot of them together, because you only get one song on a 78, so they put them a lot of together in a folder, and they called it an album.
An album, right, yeah.
And that's why, to this day, an LP is called an album.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know that. My parents still had a lot of their 78s and had a record player that would play it. And you're right, it was much like going through a photo album, but it was different sleeves, and you'd pull out the one album, you'd play the one song, you'd flip it over and play the other. Yeah, that's a lot of history. Your dad's contribution was to establish the standards of the manufacturing of records and phonographs so that everyone could play records all over the world the same way.
Yeah. You had to get every manufacturer in the world of all the records and make sure they played the same, and every manufacturer of phonographs, they all had to be compatible.
You know, and we don't think about that.
No, you don't think about it.
I remember as a young adult, we had VHS versus Beta, and you were kind of waiting to see who was going to play out. And I did read a book, and we had the author of the book on the show a couple of years ago, where when they originally started the MP3 file, they were actually looking at different formats before they universally agreed on the MP3 file for the song. Yeah. But your dad, he started the International Association of Record and Tape Manufacturers, right?
Yeah, and he had to get everybody on the same boat. You can imagine the chaos would have been if you had to get different phonographs and different records. The record business would never have grown to what it is.
And what year was that?
It was different years it was, I think, probably during World War II. Now, when the stereo record came out, there were two different formats for that. The vertical lateral and the 45-45. And Arthur Hattie, head man at Decca, said, when they all got together, said, I don't think it matters which way we go as long as we all go together. And those words lived on.
Wow.
Because they all went together. And then the LPs came out, and you could take anybody's record all over the world and play it on any record player.
Now explain the 45-45 system.
The needle has to move in two different directions to get stereo, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it moves deeper into the record material and then farther out, and then at a 45-degree angle for the other channel, it would do the same.
Wow. We don't think about that.
You don't think about it.
Yeah.
But it's all been done, and if it hadn't been done,
we wouldn't be listening to music the way we are now.
Yeah.
Your dad was also involved in the history of magnetic tape, especially from its use by the Germans in World War II through the pre-recorded tapes, and we're talking cassettes and 8-track.
In the 1960s, RCA made a machine. It was the first one to have a cassette. Now, it was about 7 inches wide and about as much area as a Bible, but much thinner.
And this was the cassette?
That was the tape.
That was the tape cartridge.
Yeah.
Was that size.
It didn't work out because people didn't want to fool something that big.
Right.
And they didn't want a reel-to-reel because they'd have to thread the tape all the time, like threading a projector.
Yeah.
So they probably lost several $1 million on that. But finally they sold the dies cartridge to Philips, and they scaled them down, and the cassette was born.
Now, what came first, the cassette or the 8-track or 4-track?
Cassette.
The cassette came first. And wasn't that technology so much better than the 8-track or the 4-track?
Well, trouble with cassettes are the tape speed is 1 7/8.
Yeah.
And the 8-track, it was 3 3/4. So you gain a lot of quality if you double the speed. That is one of the big limitations for tape is the speed.
Yeah.
For making masters, we go 15 inches per second. And maybe 30 in some time. We get a good, clear, crisp sound, but that eats up a lot of tape.
Right, and that's due to signal-to-noise ratio, right?
And the quality, I think the distortion's down, the sound is clearer. I can tell. When I told the producer said, boy, it is crisper, because I went to 30. About that time, or a little before, they started to bring out the 45 RPM record. My dad led the team that did that. And that opened up a lot of wood because you could send singles out to radio stations, and that was the basis of a whole lot of record sales there. I remember we went to Washington, D.C. when he made the announcement. The 45 was a big thing for a long time.
Yeah, it was. I remember as a kid, once again, a teenager, going to the local Montgomery Wards or Sears, whatever store it was, and you would pick up the 45. They even had listening rooms back then, so you could go in and put the 45 down and listen to it before you bought it.
You could buy one song that you say, I got to have this record.
Yeah.
That's a big hit on the radio, and you want to have it. You don't have to buy the whole album.
Different times.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for one of our sponsors, and come back. We're going to have some more conversation with David Royce, who has worked with RCA, Sun Records, for those who remember, and is a member of the Audio Engineering Society here in Nashville.
Hi, everybody. This is John Berry, and I'd love to wish you and your family a Merry, Merry Christmas.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rule Book, 101 ways to help you improve your chances of success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena. And believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics, all written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
Are you curious about Gordon Lightfoot's songwriting process, or what it was like working with Prince in the 80s? Have you ever given any thought to what goes into a golf course design or writing a book? I'm Steve Waxman, the host of The Creationist, a podcast about people who create. Each episode features a different creator sharing stories that I hope will inspire your own creativity. The Creationist is available now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
Back in the studio, David Royes. If you want to know anything about the audio industry, this is the guy to talk to. We actually met on Facebook. We're both members in the Audio Engineering Society page in Nashville. This guy pretty much knows about anything and everything when it comes to the history of recording and records. You yourself got into the business after you went to high school. You went to Purdue University, Boilermaker, and you got yourself a degree in
Electrical engineering. But you wanted to go to work in the studio as an engineer? I was a little while in making up my mind, but after going to Europe with my dad, and we went to a lot of recording studios, and I listened, I said, that'd be a fun job. And I mentioned it to my dad, and Dad, I think I ought to be a recording engineer. And he said, yeah, because he would know. And so that is a hard job to get.
And back then, where do you go to get the training to do that? Because
they didn't have school. You learned as second engineer on a session, and you just do a lot of sessions, and you gradually learn. You learn from the masters.
Yeah. Do you remember what your first session was and where you did it?
I think it was the Gaithers. It was a national. It was just an overdub session, but Chuck Seitz was the engineer. He had a record a while back done by Bobby Goldsboro called Honey.
Honey, yeah.
Boy, that launched him. Everybody after that wanted Chuck Seitz to do their records. So you learn, it takes years. And actually, when I was there working at Studio B, they started the very first recording engineer school at Belmont. They met at the studio, so I was assistant teacher on that. And now there's all kinds of recording engineer schools all over the place.
Yeah. And at Studio B, you actually started at RCA Studio in New York, right?
In New York.
And recording there.
Because they were hiring. They made the biggest expansion. They became the biggest recording facility and recording facility in the world. And they were having a major expansion, and they did a lot of hiring of technicians. But I thought, after a few years, opportunities would be better in Nashville. I could buy a house in the country with some land.
Right.
That's what I really wanted.
So you came to Nashville. That was at Studio B, right?
Yeah. The first thing we did was they sent a new console from New York that they built up there. They were very good about it. And they replaced the console, the old worn-out 4-track console in Studio B. So that was my first project, is to put that in.
How many tracks was that?
It was 16.
16. That was uptown at that point.
That was uptown.
Yeah.
And the Ampex MM1000, that was the machine to have.
In the studio, you got to work with some acts, Elvis Presley, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Chet Atkins, Dolly Parton, and many, many more. What was it like to be around them? Was it just like another day in the studio for you? Or?
Well, after a while, you get to know they're just people like you. But yeah, it was awesome. Not too many people have that privilege.
No. Felton Jarvis, who was Elvis Presley's record producer from, I think, 1966 to around 1977. What was he like?
He was so high-strung, Now, he did not have to worry about selling records.
Elvis.
When there's a session, he would have a big, tall glass of cold water. And this is the days when Alka-Seltzer came in a big, tall bottle. He would pour the whole bottle in the glass.
Elvis would?
It. No.
Oh.
Producer.
The producer would.
And drink it during the session. And all that salt, his kidneys failed.
Yeah.
No, he had got a kidney transplant, but he eventually died.
Elvis in the studio, what was that like?
Well, there was so many people
coming and going.
Yeah, it was just awesome. And even on his overdubs, I did a lot of those.
Yeah. Nice guy?
He was, of course, you do everything he wants.
Right. Because he's Elvis.
To the letter.
Yeah.
So, you gotta cater to him and don't ask why. But yeah, it was a good experience.
That's nice to hear. You had a story about, what was it, RCA, when Roger Miller signed with RCA, the management, because Roger Miller was known to be kind of a fun guy.
He had king of the road. You can't roller skate in a buffalo herd, but that's good. But you can be happy if you have a mind to.
Yeah.
And that's the point of that whole song.
Yeah.
But it was a little silly. And the first thing you told him to do was cut out all the silliness. But that's what made him.
That was his shtick back in those days.
Yeah. That was his thing.
You also spent some time at Sun Records. Now, you worked at the Sun Records here in Nashville, not the one in Memphis. Yeah. Was that a move from RCA to Sun?
Well, RCA, we didn't know when we were working that RCA was going to close their studio in 1977. So, but you got a dozen top engineers all of a sudden out of work, but studios around there, they're going to hire them. So we found jobs. It wasn't easy, but...
When you were at Sun Studio, was there anybody in particular that you remember working with there?
Absolutely. My boss, Shelby, he signed a lot of the older artists that had hits in the past. And he brought them back, and we re-recorded all of them. One of them was Patti Page.
Oh, wow.
Very big back in her day. And we did all our hits all over again, plus a few more. That was one of the most fun projects I ever had.
I have to ask, did you ever work with Perry Como?
Yes, I have. That's a strange coincidence. He was good friends with the father of one of my best friends in school. In the grade school, the dad worked in Camden. We lived in Haddon Heights. We went to school together. We were good friends, Dickie and me. And he was very good friends with Perry Como. And I worked with Perry a lot of times. One of the most relaxed, nice, easygoing people you ever met.
How long were you at Sun Studios?
I was there about 7 years. And I think he just quit recording new things and went to selling all catalog. But he had all the old Sun catalog and probably things that we did, Patti Page, that's going to sell for a long time. So the business changes.
Yeah.
And you got to change with it or go.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, get another word for another one of our sponsors. And then you and I are going to have a little discussion about how the business has changed and where we think it's going.
You're listening to the business side of music.
My name is Garrett Hope. I am a composer, coach, podcaster, and speaker. I've been focused on building my music business since the early 2000s and helping others build their music businesses since 2015. I want to tell you about a free event I'm organizing for January. It's called the Ultimate Music Business Summit. It'll take place January 7, 8, and 9. Here's the deal. Through the summit, I want to help you build your own stimulus package for 2021. There will be over 21 teachers giving over 21 high-leverage business lessons you can use in your music business immediately so you can make 2021 the best year for your music ever. If you want to make more money with your music, grow your audience, or impact more people, this summit is for you. More than that, there will be a few live panel discussions so we can discuss this in real time. It's going to be amazing. And yes, it's free. This summit will give you real-world, not theoretical, strategies you can implement immediately. I promise you, with all the teachers lined up, you'll get something you've never thought of before. Even though building a business is hard, and trust me, no one is promising it's easy, it is possible. You just need the right tools and strategies. Get your free ticket today and reserve your spot in the summit. Build your own stimulus package for 2021. I look forward to seeing you at the summit. Go to musicsummit.biz. That's musicsummit.biz to get your ticket today.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio, sitting across the console from me, David Royce is with us. The business, and we talked about this before the break, the business has changed so dramatically. And I remember my boss saying to me at the record label, one of the record labels I worked at, that we stopped selling singles. And I said, why? And he says, we're getting out of the singles business. Our job is to sell albums. Now, this was 2 or 3 years before the advent of iTunes. Nobody had any idea that we would eventually not only not be selling albums, but we wouldn't be selling a physical product. We'd be selling a digital product. Now we're not selling that at all. It's just streaming, and people basically are renting the music. Did you ever see any of this coming?
No. Digital was just coming around, and computers were starting to get more and more sophisticated.
And smaller.
And smaller, and practical for the everyday person. And finally, with digital, the public could get a perfect recording where you can't, records sound good, tapes sound okay, but digital is perfect.
Do you think sometimes, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I want your opinion, do you think sometimes that the digital sound is a little too perfect, that maybe we're missing something, or do you think it's where it needs to be?
Vinyl's making a comeback, cassettes are making a comeback, because the people want that. They call it a warm sound.
Yeah.
But digital is kind of stark and...
It's very pristine.
Yeah, very pristine, and there's no personality to it. I guess they want to...
That's a great analogy of it. Yeah, there's just lack of the personality.
But that's why vinyl, they sound good. You're used to the noise and the tape hiss and whatever, and when it's gone, I guess you kind of miss it.
I know that my wife and I will play vinyl in the house, and we'll get the albums out that we listen to from the 1970s and 80s. And we don't mind that little crackle and pop every once in a while, because to me, it just still sounds so much warmer. There's that word again.
Yeah.
But that's what it sounds like.
It makes you think, you've got a record on.
Do you think there's any reason to try and replicate that? And the reason I ask that is because the music seems to be more and more compressed these days, thinner, maybe it's that lack of warmth. Do you think, and you said it, vinyl is coming back. People are buying more vinyl, and people are buying cassettes. It makes me wish I hadn't gotten rid of my cassette catalog. But do you think that the digital music scene will try and replicate that, or are they okay where they're at and they're just not going to change anything?
I kind of think they're okay where they're at.
Yeah.
I don't see them changing, but I kind of think that iTunes and the like has kind of just decimated the record business as we know it.
It has. It really has.
Yeah.
I remember one of the record labels I worked for, we would do $100 million a year in business, small independent label. And within 3 or 4 years, we were doing a third of that because of the whole digital download process. And it really does decimate the record business.
But you don't get the graphics anymore, the album cover and the pictures.
Thank you.
And the liner notes could be Chet Atkins wrote liner notes for somebody.
In fact, I was talking with someone last week out of Los Angeles, and we had that exact same conversation where they said to me, hey, do you remember this guy? And I went, oh my gosh, he was like on this album and that album. He played bass guitar and he played upright bass. And they go, yeah. And they go, how did you know that? And I said, I read the liner notes. I remember that name when it stuck out. I do miss those.
Yeah.
What's up with you these days? Just relaxing, retired?
Yeah, I'm retired. I just hang out at the house and I keep busy. I go hiking in the woods, and sometimes I cut my own firewood. I burn it in the winter.
Yeah. Do you miss working in the studio?
Yeah, I do. But I got a big stereo at home, and I can crank it up anytime I want. There's no neighbors close to me. I can make it as loud as I want. When I was a teenager and my parents went away, we had a big system. I put records on, I cranked it all the way up.
Yeah.
Now, later on, I had to wait till my kids leave. And then I put them on, I crank it up. But now I pretty much do it anytime I want.
David, thank you so much.
Great to be here.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.
Mistletoe. I can't drive a brand new car. No white Christmas with all that snow. I want a Santa that plays guitar. I don't need no diamond rings, pretty lights that shine bright from afar. You can keep your evergreen. Just give me a Santa that plays guitar. While the kids are counting sheep, dreaming of their Christmas toys, Santa's sliding down that chimney to jam with me and the boys. Take it, Santa, go, go! Fancy things. I'm happy just the way things are. All I need is my six string and a Santa that plays guitar. I don't need no afterglow from drinking your Christmas wine. All I need is a melody to move my soul, and Santa keep it perfect time. Everyone loves a Christmas tune, don't matter who you are. Cool cats all dream of swinging along with a Santa that plays guitar. A Santa Claus that plays guitar. A Santa, I'm talking about the man in the red suit that plays guitar. Yeah, yeah. Merry Christmas, everybody.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.